Hi, everyone. Welcome in. Looks like we've got people coming in from the waiting room. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Rhiannon Williams. I'm a product owner here at TLC. I'm joined by Kim Mumbauer, product manager here at TLC. And today we're going to be talking about the sort of an overview and an introduction to the title editor in LS2 Cataloging. So we're going to step through some of the basics of those different areas of the title editor. So that's where we edit any of the bibliographic information, enter any of the metadata we need about the particular title. So this doesn't include the item editor, which includes those item level specific information. This is just the broader information about the sort of like manifestation of this particular book or what have it. So I'm going to walk through these different areas of the title editor through the process and through the lens of cataloging a book. So my example I'll be using today, hopefully my camera wants to, my background likes to take it out. Oh, now I'm all gone. Anyway, this is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. I have not read it yet. I just picked it up, so I'm very excited to read it here soon. So this is a great candidate for going through here. And if you have read it, let me know what you think about it, or if it's on your TBR list. But I'm going to go through all of these different sections of the title editor here. And as you can see, there are a lot of different sections. So this is just meant to be sort of an overview, kind of a quick go through these sections, talk about where we find that information, about the material, if you have the material in front of you, or where you can go to find more information about the item that you're cataloging. So this isn't going to be as detailed or in depth as like a cataloging class, but this will be just sort of an overview and stepping through the process. So I'm now here in LS2 Cataloging here on our home page where we come in with our activity feed and everything. And I have gone ahead and created a new title to show how we would do some original cataloging for this material. So I'm going to go ahead and pop in here. So all I've done is, I went in and found, I went ahead and created a new blank title record for this. And in order to save it, you have to include the title, the main title here, as well as the language information. So I went ahead and added those two, but that is all I've added to my title so far. So we're going to come into our edit mode and we'll step through all of these different sections here of the title editor and talk about what information you may put in there, where you might find that information, and some of the tips and tricks along the way. So here in the title editor, just like many of the other areas within LS2 cataloging, and if you're using the title or the item editor in LS2 staff, they are a form-based editor, meaning it uses more natural language, so you can just enter in the information in the text boxes, and then the LS2 cataloging and LS2 staff behind the scenes does all of that mark conversion for you. So you don't have to remember any of the mark fields and subfields and bytes or any of the indicators or anything like that. We've really streamlined that process to really let you focus on adding the most relevant information about the material rather than having to remember the mark standards and things like that. And there are some little quirks here and there where you may want to look up mark standards, especially for like formatting of some things, but I'll touch on those as we go through and kind of highlight them. So we're going to start up here with our title section of the title editor. And one of those, as I mentioned, the required fields to save a title is the main title. So this is going to be, our biggest, most prominent title on the cover of the book, usually. So this one, it's Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. And the formatting of this often is where the very first letter of the first word is capitalized, and all the rest of them are non-capitalized, except if they are a proper noun. Again, this may change depending on your cataloging standards for your particular library, and how catalogers have done it in the past, and how, sort of your own institution standards. But generally, that's what catalogers like to follow. And this main title here, as well as a couple of other titles I'll talk about in series and uniform title, have this little different sort title checkbox. So if, for instance, we are cataloging, say, the cat in the hat, if I can type today. So if we're cataloging the book, The Cat in the Hat, we want this book to be indexed and sorted in searches and things by C for cat, so that it appears with all of those books rather than under T for the. And so we can accomplish that by checking different sort title, and then we can come in here and do C for cat. Oh, and it wants it to match exactly. So for sort title, you just remove the text that you don't want included in, for the sorting and for indexing and things. So I just, delete the initial article and that space. And so now cat in the hat. And so that would be saved, and now it would appear as in searches under C for cat rather than under T for the. So that's something to keep in mind as you go through. If you come across any of these title fields where a sort title pops up, and it might be helpful to remove that initial article, we definitely recommend doing that. But I am going to go ahead and add back in our original title. And we also have options here to add other types of titles. So our title dropdown gives a whole host of different types of titles you can add depending on the type of material you're cataloging. But one of the ones that I want to point out that is most common are alternate titles. So this can be used for whenever you have a title that includes things like contractions or easily misspelled words or abbreviations or something like that. Spelling out the whole word can be helpful to include an alternate title. So this is giving some more options for indexing. If somebody searched for a title that has contractions, but they use like the non-contracted version of the word, then it will appear because you've included that as one of the alternate titles. And also, alternate titles can be helpful for including subtitles, or rather including series titles in there. If somebody may be searching for by a main title, they may be searching by title and they want to search for a series. So it can be helpful to add that in there as well. And then the second one I want to point out quickly is our subtitle. So that is where we add any of the that sort of like secondary information on a title. My book here I'm cataloging today doesn't have a subtitle, but this often will come up for, it may be included for different like manga or comic book series or something like that. Your main title might be, the title of the arc or something like that, and then your subtitle might be that specific volume's name. It can depend on how your library catalogs these materials, as I'll talk about more in a little bit. Cataloging is I like to think of it more of as an art than a science. It takes there's a lot of like interpretation from the cataloger. And so one book can have vastly different, maybe not super vastly, but there may be some different nuances in the cataloging between, say, how I might catalog this book and how Kim might catalog it, or how you might catalog this book, depending on our backgrounds, who we're cataloging it for, who our end user, our patron, student, customer might be when they're looking for this material. So there's a lot of different decisions that go into how you catalog a material, but in general, subtitle is helpful for including some of those additional title information. Like oftentimes you may see, this particular book doesn't have it, but if it was Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, and then a novel, you would put a novel in the subtitle if patrons may be searching for that. So I don't have a subtitle, so I'm going to remove that empty field because it will give me an alert if I try to save with a blank field like that. And then next we also have our series and uniform title search. So this is the first one of the many authority controlled fields within our title editor, meaning that we have a huge database of authorities that are pulled from a couple of different places, but ITSMARC authorities is mostly comprised of authorities from the National Authority File from Library of Congress. And this is updated nightly, so that they are updated and we're getting regular updates. And so you have up-to-date prompt authorities as they are changed. And so this is the key to the great search and discovery that comes with using authority-controlled fields, meaning that all of the series that are related together are going to be brought together under the same heading. So you don't have, little misspellings or different capitalization or punctuation things that are going to cause them to not link together. So if this particular book does not have a series, but if I search in here, go to the other page, I can see it because I know she has some series. Yes, so she has a Shades of Magic series. So I can search, for instance, if this was one of those books, I can search for Shades of Magic. And here in the ITSMARC series, I do have a Shades of Magic series I can choose. Or if, for instance, I want this to display maybe a little bit different, like say I want to have the author's last name in there. And so I want it to display as, Schwab Shades of Magic in case there's multiple different Shades of Magic series out there. And I want to display that way, I can go in and create a local authority. And so even though it's not something that's included in the National Authority File or our series service, it's something that will continue to show up within LS2 cataloging and group those all together for you. So you still got that great authority controlled, all those benefits for them to all be grouped together. And then if this was a title in a series, we can add volume information here. How the volume information displays, whether you're adding, like volume, adding the word volume, or if you're adding VOL or V dot, or, pound sign, hashtag, and then the number, how that is displayed is up to the cataloger. So, or you can just, add, the number in there. So that's, there's some flexibility in there. So we are finished with our sort of title section up here. So now we're going to come down to the contributors section. And these contributors are for any people or companies or organizations who are involved in the creation of the material. So this section starts out with our statement of responsibility. So this is a note field that includes any of those contributors who are responsible for the material. So in most cases, that is going to be our author listed on the background remover is kind of a pain. Sorry about that. It keeps wanting to get rid of me. But anyway, so the author on the cover of the material. So this is by V.E. Schwab. And so I can add in the author there, and I can add in, written by V.E. Schwab. And if this was like a manga or a picture book or something where there is an illustrator, it's important to add a space and a semicolon, and I can add illustrated by, and then the author or the illustrator in there, or an editor or a translator or anything like that. This statement of responsibility note field is used by some of our processes in the backend, used by RD Express to add in some of those role terms. So when I see here that, written by V.E. Schwab, it's going to go ahead and already add the author role term to when I add in this author in there. And if I have illustrated by and a name there and it appears in the contributor here, it's going to add illustrator to it. So that really streamlines the process for adding some of those RDA role terms in there. Yes, thank you, Kim, for adding that to the chat. That is a very good point. As we go through this, I haven't saved any of this yet so far. So I do want to go ahead and save. I'm going to go ahead and save as a draft. Oh, title update. Oh, my lock expired. I was taking too long. There you go. Okay. So now I've saved my draft. It refreshed my lock, so I'm in here without a problem. And we do have this autosave draft option, so I'm going to enable that. And so it's going to autosave now every 1 minute I have it selected. So now that I've added my statement of responsibility in here, I can search for my author. And so I've searched for V.E. Schwab, and I know that the authority for this particular author is Victoria Schwab. And I can, just leave this here, but I know that she is the author, and I do want to add, if I can spell correctly, add in that role. This isn't, it isn't required for you to do that. If you have a statement of responsibility in here that has relevant information, RD Express will add that automatically. But this is something that can be helpful for identifying the different roles that all the contributors play, especially helpful for really complex materials that may have lots of contributors, especially music CDs, sometimes audiobooks if there's a large cast for those, or any sort of like movie or DVD or anything like that, where there's a large group of people, a large production, where there's lots of actors and directors, producers, editors, sound engineers, musicians, things like that. So using these role terms to differentiate their role as related to this material can be very helpful. And we also have this little creator checkbox. And so this is for you to select what is the main contributor to the record. So for instance, for books, it's going to be that author, whoever wrote the book, whose name appears prominent on the cover, the lead editor, things like that, the most relevant, the responsible person for the material. So I'm going to select them as the creator. And for those that are familiar with MARC, that means that this creator is going to be in the 100, or if it's a corporate or a meeting or something like that, it'll go in those relevant 1XX fields rather than in the additional creators in the 700s for those linked additional creators. So now we've covered our contributor section. So we've added all of the relevant authors and things like that. If there were editors or illustrators, we'd add them here. And so the next section here is our summary section. And so this is a note field where we can add information that may be helpful for letting our patrons or customers or students know about what this material is about. Oftentimes it can be super easy to just copy whatever summary information is on the back of the material. So I can do that. Or I do also have options for grabbing those summary informations from other sources that have that either have the material listed for sale. I can go on Amazon or on different booksellers, or your vendor that you purchased the material from, and grab that summary information. Or we can also search for some other sources like Storygraph, or we can search on WorldCat and find that summary information and then, copy and paste in there. That's one of the great benefits of LS2 cataloging, is that it does, since it is browser-based and it's all Unicode compliant, we can come in here and copy and paste in information from one website into here, and it's going to display perfectly fine, both here in LS2 cataloging when you're looking at the title, and also in LS2 Pack or LS2 Kids once those titles are updated and then published. And so we do have the option, one of the new things coming that are available in 5.8 is the option to add multiple summaries, which can be very helpful if you've got, there may be, multiple different types of summaries that you want to include. So, you've got your summary on the back of the book, but you also have a great blurb that's a lot more detailed that's on the inside of the dust jacket, which my camera is cutting out. And so, you may want to include the inside of the dust jacket little blurb there. Or you may want to include another summary that's from your vendor website, or a summary that is included from, a user, like a consumer site, sort of like StoryGraph. So I can come in here and, I could copy and paste those. This is actually the exact blurb that's on the inside of the dust jacket. So I can go ahead and copy these in there. Something to note with these fields is in MARC records, we don't like to have, returns, carriage returns are big spaces here. So I would want to make sure that when I copy and edit this description in there, that I went back to the wrong page. So I've got all of these carriage returns in here to separate them out. I will want to make sure that I don't have those. So I would, add spaces in there, or add some sort of formatting to differentiate those as we go through. So one of those little tricky things, and also we don't have, there's not rich text formatting or anything like that in here. So that's one of the things to note. One of the little fun quirks of MARC records and things like that. So I'll go ahead and remove that summary for right now. Another note on summaries before we jump to the next thing. It can also be really helpful to add multiple summaries for your material that you're cataloging, especially if it's in another language than the primary language of your patrons or students. So if this was if this version of the material was in French, I could have my summary in English because that is the primary language of my patrons, and I'm cataloging in English. That's the language I'm fluent in. But if this was the French version I was reading it, I could also include a summary in French or in Spanish, or things like that. Adding multiple summaries just makes it more accessible and findable and useful for our patrons and students and customers. So now we've got these next two sections I want to talk about are genres and subjects. And so these are those more subjective areas of cataloging that I was talking about, where your expertise as a cataloger and as a staff member, as a library staff member, and as a teacher, and all of these, all of your experience and your understanding of your patrons and customers and students, or what have you, is going to shape how you catalog the material. And so that means, like I said, that the same book can be cataloged with different genres and subjects depending on if it's going into a school library, or if it's going into a public library or an academic library, and what have you. So in general, subjects are used for what the book is about, and genres is about what the book is. So I'll kind of tease apart those as we go through and catalog this particular book. But these genres are used to describe those broader categories that this book falls into, rather than what the book is about. So for this particular book, when I'm looking at some other resources here, so if I'm looking here at StoryGraph, I can see that the genres included in here are fiction and fantasy, historical, and LGBTQIA+. And it also has some other, qualifiers about it, that it's like a mysterious book, and it's dark and emotional and medium paced. So sources like StoryGraph or Goodreads can be really great to find those genres, and sometimes subjects too, about that your patrons or your customers are going to be most familiar with, because they're the terms that they're used most often. One of the ones that has been added most recently that I can think about that is really common is like romantasy. And so searching and looking for those types of genres um, on resources like Storygraph and Goodreads can be very helpful for understanding what the genre is. And using sources like these, like searching through Storygraph or Goodreads or WorldCat, can be incredibly helpful when cataloging material, because more times than not, we're not able to read everything that comes across our desk that we're cataloging, and we're only getting a brief look at what the book is about. And so if we aren't getting vendor records in, or you're not, totally copy cataloging from another source, through its marker C3950, you may not know what the book is about. You may be able to glean the genres by looking at it and knowing what the author has written and things like that. But knowing what the book is about can be a little bit more tricky. So here we do use a glossary. So it's another form of control, and it allows you to group all of those together, so that again helps with the having multiple genres that are very similar, if there's like misspellings or different punctuation or capitalization, stuff like that. So we have, I know I want to add fantasy fiction. I know I want to add that. I know I also just want to add fiction, because that's what this is. And I do want to add LGBT fiction, because that was in there. And let's see, what else was in here? Historical. Yeah, historical fiction could be very helpful. And I'm going to pop over here to WorldCat once more and see. So when you are here on WorldCat and searching, you get like your brief information, but then you can also pop down and see more information here to see more. And, genre, usually they've only included the one prominent genre, and then there may be some additional genres included down here in subjects as well. So we've got, romance and vampire fiction and things like that. So those might be useful to include in here as well. So see if we got, yes, we have vampire fiction, and let's add romance fiction as well. And another, I don't think this is one that we have added right now. Yeah, another very common like user generated genre, maybe like dark academia or something like that. So that isn't one of our genres we have right now. I think that as soon as we're done with our webinar today, I'll probably go add that, because I can definitely see that being added as a prominent genre. So dark academia could be helpful to add as like a subject, a local subject or something like that. And so we've added all of our genres here. And if you are cataloging in an external MARC editor and then loading them in, if a genre is in a record that does not appear in our in the glossaries, they do show up here, and they will have like a little triangle with an exclamation point icon next to them, letting them know, hey, this isn't in our glossary, but they are totally fine. They display just the same, just as a heads up that you can add genres that are not in our glossary in an external MARC editor and bring them in. So here in subjects, this is where we are adding information about what the book is about. We already know that it is a LGBT fantasy romance historical vampire fiction book. So we've already got all that great information up here, but we want to add information about what this book is about. So I do know from the little bit of the blurbs I've read and by looking at some of the subjects here, is that it looks like there's information about it being set in London, and also some in Spain and some in Boston. So we can add a bunch of geographic subjects in here, which can be very helpful if someone's looking for fiction set in Spain or fiction set in London. They can find those. So I'm going to go ahead and add London. Find the broader London, England information. Let me see if I can find that. if it wants to just put, there we go, London, England. And I can add the subdivision of fiction since this is a fictional work, and that will help sort of narrow it down so that someone's looking for a nonfiction like travel guide on London, England, they'll know that, oh, this is a fictional work about this rather than a nonfiction work. And I also do know that vampires are in here, so it can be helpful to add something like vampires fiction. And you may see as you go through here, you may find some that are the heading and they have a subdivision added on there. That just means that it's a very popular one, and Library of Congress has their own specific identifier for vampire fiction rather than vampires and just add on fiction on there as a free floating subdivision. So if you come across those are very helpful to add. And then it will, as we save this, because I'm going to go ahead and turn off my autosave draft to show that it moved fiction over here. But this is linked to the specific vampire fiction heading. Just a little side note there about some of these particular settings. Let me see what other types of subjects I want to add in here. Let's look. You do see we've got things like loneliness and widows and things like that, immortalism, things like that. But I can add in more other geographic ones as well. And we can also add if this was specific to for some reason about like something specific related to a geographic area, then I could find the geographic subdivision of say, London, England, or things like that. So we've got lots of, oh, there's so many. I don't know why there's so many of those. I'll have to look into that. So there are, geographic free-floating subdivisions you can search for here, but there are also chronological ones. So for this section that is set for London, England, I know we've got dates here in the beginning, 1827. So you say, 1800, something, yeah, early works to the 1800s, or, I may want to add some. And again, these are a glossary. So if you are ever looking for a specific chronological subdivision and you can't find the one that you're looking for, feel free to reach out to Kim or myself in, either by email or reaching out to support or anything like that. Kim and myself make ourselves really available. Bring it to a Q&A session that we have monthly, and we can absolutely get these added. The other way that people commonly request these are via LS ideas. So if you come across any subdivision that exists or you want to be in the glossary, feel free to reach out to us and we will get that added. So you can add, chronological ones in there, and so that might be helpful. I'm not going to do full cataloging on this because we, only have so much time today, and we got another whole chunk of the title editor to cover. So we'll just leave it at that for now. And then next, I want to talk on contents notes. This isn't something that's relevant to this particular book, but I'll talk about when you might use them and when they can be really helpful. So these contents notes are used to detail what is within the material as far as like the different titles or individual things that are within the material. So this can be very helpful for things like anthologies or short story collections, or for even like musical CDs where you've got multiple tracks and you want to have all that information in there. So we've got two different types of contents notes. You have your basic contents note, which is just a free-form text. So you can add in that, information of like the first track and the runtime and things like that. And this is just a free form, you can format that as you wish. There are some guidelines for that out there on, commonly the common ways that we format basic contents notes as catalogers, but we have also the enhanced contents note that can be a little bit helpful, a little more helpful for sort of divvying up that information, because this will separate these into different subfields. So for an enhanced contents note, you have, some sort of a general information you can add that is in the beginning of the contents note. So you can add information like, this is for, side A of a vinyl, for instance. And then you can add, sort of the runtime of the entire side. Say, it runs for 35 minutes and 34 seconds or something. So I can add, runtime information in here, and then I can add each of the tracks that are in here. So I can add, the title of the track. I can add those contributors that are here, and then I can also add other miscellaneous information like runtime. Or, if it is an anthology, I can add, put information here and say, volume 1, early American short stories or something. Just making these up. And then you can add the title of the short story, the contributors to it, the author, editors, things like that, and add page information here, for instance. And so these contents notes often can act sort of as a like table of contents. They serve very much the same purpose, but you can add more, miscellaneous information in here as well as you need. And you can add multiple contents notes, add multiple titles in here as you need. So that is a helpful tool available within here. And then we also have our other notes section. So this isn't going to include all the other kinds of notes that you can add in a title record. So the default type that drops down is a general note, which goes in the 500 field. And so this can be used for basically any sort of note you want to continue to have contained in your bibliographic record. There's all kinds of things you may have in there. Could be, information about this specific material. It could be acquisition information. It could be, all sorts of things that you may want to add in there. So, if this material was donated by someone, you may want to add that as a general note in here and things like that. You do also have options for a wide variety of other kinds of notes. I will add there is, an audience note, so you can add audience information in here. So if it's like, you can add in if it is like rated T for teen, or, if this is rated M or a rated R movie, things like that can be added in here as a note. You can also add in other kinds of notes like a local note. So if you want to add in a local note for your acquisition information, things like that. The differences here is that, oftentimes this local note field is not going to, you may have it configured to display an LS2 pack, you may have it not configured to display. So where you are placing these kinds of notes relevant to your particular copy of this, or, when you order this book, and things like that, you may want to put them in a local note, general note, just depending on if you want them to display an LS2 pack or not. And then we also have other notes in here that can be helpful, including like study programs. You can put Lexile information, accelerated reader info, things like that in there. And then also system requirements can be very helpful for things like software, like electronic items, so ebooks, e-audiobooks, to put like the amount of space you need for it. If there's a certain like operating system requirement, like if you need to be on a certain version of iOS or on Android, or if you need to have batteries for this particular material or something like that, or if you need to, if it's like a video game and you need like this basic amount of specs in order to run the game, then that can be helpful information to include in system requirements. So I don't have any other notes to add in this particular book. The next section is awards. So we have this another glossary here where we can add in award information. And just like I said earlier, and Kim put a link in the chat for LS ideas, feel free to add any awards that you all use and that you want to have here in this drop down. So if you have a local award that either, your district gives out, if you have like, your district awards things, or if your state libraries or anything like that, or an international award that you want to include, this may be, feel free to reach out to us and I'll put it on LS Ideas or things like that, and then we can get it added. And Mary, I absolutely can give you an update when Dark Academia is added, because that would be, I think that will be very helpful. Uh, in the same realm, using something like a subject term for like book talk could be helpful to kind of like group all those books together if they're like really popular on TikTok or something. Uh, could be helpful. I don't know that it'd be great for a genre, but if especially if you are in the school or the public sphere and you want to kind of group together all of those books that are, as they come popular on TikTok and Instagram and things like that, could be useful to include that as a subject or even a series if you want. So just an idea. But yeah, back here to awards. You can add the award that you want if you search for it here. So I'm, for instance, if this was a picture book and I wanted to add a Caldecott medal to it, I could do that, or an honor if it was, I didn't win the medal, but it got an honor. Something to note is that this, when you add an award here, it does add an awards note to the other notes section, but it does not, when you add the award here, it does not add any other relevant information like the year that it was awarded and things like that. So that could be helpful to include in that awards note. If that's something that you want to be able to search for, if you want to find like the Caldecott honors for 2024, then adding in that a year information could be helpful. And then here in our characteristics section, I'm going to briefly talk about this. All of this section is about our RDA characteristics. And so these are things that are, a lot of them are going to be auto-populated as you catalog this material and then you save it and publish it by RDA Express, depending on the settings you may have enabled and disabled, which is coming in a future release. So currently, the relevant fields for a book are only going to be the audience right here. So this audience drop down is what's going to differentiate this material on who the primary, who the intended audience for this material is. And so I know that this is an adult novel. So this cataloging this material as adult means that it will not show up in LS2 Kids. I want to make sure that I get this one right. So if you do use LS2 Kids at your library and you want to filter out things that are not appropriate for children, this audience drop down, the audience characteristic, is what does that filtering for you. And so the ones that do show up in LS2 Kids are juvenile and so juvenile, pre-adolescent, and preschool are the ones, and primary, I believe, are the other ones that show up here in LS2 Kids. So those are the ones that you want to use for it to show up in LS2 Kids. Even if you have it in any or general, if I believe they're in a specific holdings code, they may show up. But in general here, these are the ones that you don't want to use for LS2 Kids material, including adolescent, since those are considered for YA and those are not usually included in LS2 Kids. So something to note about, if you're choosing the audience here, and can be helpful for limiting out materials from displaying. And, again, all of these are those RDA characteristic terms that get added as needed. But in general, a lot of these are going to be only relevant for specific formats like DVDs or music information, if it's a video game, you add game console information, things like that. Our little format designator down here is because this is in one of our new in process builds of like what is currently going on. And so we've been working on change format and development. So this is where format information is going to display now in the title record, also appear in the top. So here's a little sneak peek of what's to come. And then, yeah, so that's all I want to talk about here as far as characteristics for our brief overview today. And next we have physical description. Oh, well, before we hop onto that, Brenda asks, will the format be editable then? Yes, so change format is something that is coming in a future release. It's something we're working on right now and will be available in a release coming out later this year. So we're very excited. We are very excited for this to come out, and we're excited to tell you more about it here, hopefully sometime soon. So here, the next section is the physical description. So here is where we add any of the information to describe the three-dimensional actual material that you holding in your hand, or in some cases it would be the digital material itself. So I'll talk about sort of the nuances there. So for a material like a book, you're wanting to include information like the amount of pages that are in here. So without spoiling the book for myself, I'm going to come back to my, so find the last page number. Make sure I don't miss it. 535 pages. Okay. 535 pages. So I add that information in there. I could add, relevant, details. If there's something in particular I want to add about this particular book. Could also add in dimensions, which is could be helpful, especially if you are cataloging objects, especially things like kits or library of things, or if you are an archivist and you are working on archival materials, adding dimensions can be very helpful for knowing what you're looking for. So whether or not it's going to be, a single sheet of paper within a larger folder, or if you are looking for a giant tote. So could be helpful to include that information in here. And typically those are included in like length by width centimeters. And then accompanying material can be very helpful for adding other material that may come with this. So if say this was a book club kit that came with 4 copies of the book and a book club like guide, I may include, I may say, 4 hardback books, say that for instance, and then I put, accompanying material, book club guide sheet, for instance, if that's something, I want to include there. Or if it's like a kit, you may, describe the main material, the main meat of the actual kit, and then also add all of those accompanying materials. Like if it comes with, say it's like a rock kit or something, you may have like a magnifying glass and fact sheets and pencils and, all sorts of different things that may be in there. So accompanying material can be helpful for adding some of those other things. And again, these are all like open free text fields, so you can format them as you need and things like that. And like all the other little text fields in here, they are scalable and movable. So if you need more space to add more info, feel free to drag it out and it will scale as you need as you go through. And you can add multiple physical descriptions if you are cataloging multiple materials together in a kit, for instance. So that's something to note here. I'm gonna, go ahead and leave this as my one book don't have anything else, and I don't know exact dimensions of this book, so I will leave that blank for now. The next section here is language. And so, like I mentioned in the beginning, your main language is one of the required fields for saving a title. So adding the main language of the material is very important. It will give you an error and not let you save if it doesn't have a main language. But we have other types of languages that we can add in here, other types of language information we can add. And all of these drop downs are from a glossary, and these are all of the um, recognized languages by Library of Congress for MARC formatting. And so these all have those MARC language codes that get added in. So for, say, a movie that is dubbed in another language, you can add that here. If it is a material that has parallel text in another language, like often a lot of like early learning language, early language learning materials, like picture books and things may have parallel text, one side in English, one side in Japanese, for instance. So may have both of those. So adding that language information here is very helpful. Subtitled information. So if it's a DVD or a Blu-ray or something of a movie or a TV show that has subtitles available in multiple languages, adding those in here can be very helpful. It's something that I think can sometimes be missed when cataloging things like TV shows and movies, that it can be very, very helpful for adding those things in here to know that, there are, descriptive subtitles in multiple languages that can be very helpful for patrons who may be looking for, things to watch that are in the language they're most comfortable using. And then additionally, we also have an option for a translated from language selection here. So if it is a material that was originally written and published in one language, but then translated to another, you can add that language in here. So that's all of our language information here. And when you are adding other languages in any of these, it will add a language note up here in our other notes section. So it'll auto add those as you go through, once the title is saved and published and things like that, it automatically adds those in. Saves you a little bit of work there. I know I'm running through this very quickly, and we're nearing the very end of our discussion, and then I'll hopefully get to answer some questions here at the end. So the next section we have is publication information. So this is going to include, this first section here is all about edition. And so publication information is about the publisher, the distributor, the manufacturer information of the physical, or albeit the digital material that you are lending out from your library. So for edition, I do know that this is a signed edition, so I want to add that information in here. If it's a sign, actually I know that it is signed first edition, so I do want to add that. But could be a second edition, it could be it could be a large print edition or things like that. You want to add edition information in here, and then we can add a publication information group. And so we can choose different types of publication information. I know I want to add a publisher, and the publication information is going to be pulled all from our copyright page, which is on the back of the title page within our book, and it's going to, I'm going to disappear. I wish there was a better way of showing that. There we go. So here's our copyright page, and that's where you're going to find all the relevant information for here in our publication information section. And so as I go through here, I can see, published by, it says it's a tour book. So, I could add, tour, or I can do right here where it says published by Tom Dirty Associates. Oh. Tour Publishing Group. And this does have I know that it does say first edition and published in 2025, so I want to add my date. And then you also want to add the place of the publisher. So it will have usually the name of the publisher and then their location. So I see that this one is in New York, New York. So can add that here. There we go. So I've added the publisher information here, and publishing information can be kind of funky because like oftentimes there's imprints of larger publishers and smaller publishers get bought up by larger ones. So this is both a Tor book by Tor Publishing Group or Tom Doherty Associates, but it's also part of Macmillan Publishing Group. So it can be kind of confusing as you're going through those. I like to use the one that is the most prominent, the first one listed, sort of the more narrow version, but you can add another publication group in here for, add Macmillan Publishing and add the location for Macmillan as well. So that's an option. And then the other really important date that we want to add here is the copyright date, or if it is a audio material, like an audiobook, e-audiobook, music, things like that, we want to add phonogram date. So I'll talk about copyright date first. So copyright date is we are going to copy what is listed here on our copyright page. So this one says copyright 2025 by Victoria Schwab. So I want to add my date of 2025. And you can choose to just add the date in here just as is. Oftentimes we like, a lot of catalogers like to add the actual copyright Unicode symbol. And so I can do that by using my little hotkey to pull up my character viewer. And so I can double click that. Hopefully you can see I added my copyright symbol here. Or if you are, and I'm on a Mac, so I have that quickly pull up by Control Command Space. But if you are using a Windows computer, I know there's a different key combination to do that. I don't know it off the top of my head though. So, or if you can, Google copyright symbol Unicode on Google and then copy and paste it in here. Either way, or you can leave it out. Kind of up to you. I like adding the copyright symbol in there. And you can add multiple copyright dates if there are multiple ones in here. And especially, if, and then there's also reprint date you can add if there's, for a date for another reprinting of it. And then if, for instance, if this was a audiobook or, an audiobook, I can add the phonogram date information. And so if this was the audiobook version, I could add in, the date. And just like with copyright, there is a specific phonogram or sound recording copyright symbol, and that is the P in a circle. So I can add that same with my little character viewer as well. But this is not a sound recording, so I removed that one. So I've got my copyright date and I have my publisher thing. So these are, this is a new change where we've got the date associated with the publisher, with this when this publisher published this material, versus the date that the material is copywritten by the copyright holder. So those are two sort of different things because you may have multiple publishers that have, published it over time versus who holds the copyright and when it was copywritten, if that makes sense. All right, we are down at the very bottom of our section and we are quickly running out of time, but I will briefly talk about our standard numbers. Again, this has, drop downs where you can choose multiple different kinds. Our most commonly used ones for the vast majority of school or public or academic libraries are going to be our ISBN, which is the barcode. I know it's going to disappear on the back. Ooh, you can see it, right? Yeah, there we go. Our barcode on the back of the book there. Or if it is a non-book material, it would be the UPC or the EAN if it's published in the EU. So the barcode's on the back of the book, and you can use a barcode scanner and scan those in directly in here. So that can be added, and I am going to just very quickly copy and paste that in here. That's another option. You can copy paste. And do you have option for qualifying information? So I can add, add signed first edition, hardback. So if I want to qualify that this is, what I'm adding in here for this particular thing, especially helpful if you are adding in all your paperbacks and hardbacks together in one title record and want to differentiate which standard number goes with which. There are other types of standard numbers you may add in here, publisher number or your LCCN or an ISSN for, serials and things like that, or, a government document number if you are working with government documents. So there are different options here depending on what kind of standard number your material has. And these specifically as far as ISBNs and UPCs, this is super important if you use enhanced content, have a subscription to enhanced content with Syndetics Unbound, have that integration here, because enhanced content uses that standard number of an ISBN or a UPC to pull in that cover art information or and summary information, things like that, that display and pack. So very important to include a standard number when you have one available. And then also our last major section here is classification. So this is this is where we can add information about where this material is placed within the larger collection, if that makes sense. So where is this material going to live? As far as shelf location, that is, this is where we can put what is going to go on our spine label, for instance, if we want to put that there. And the classification information included here in the title record is not necessarily what shows up on an item. Whatever we put here in our title record, is prompted as a suggestion to the staff member when they create an item afterwards. So if we know that this is going to go in our, fiction, Schwab, say, I have a whole collection of, and this was published in 2025, but I have a whole collection of dark academia and I want to move all of those together, dark academia, adult fiction, so I know that this is what the call number of the material, this is what the spine label is going to look like. That's where I would add the classification information. But additionally, we can add other types of classifications if we have if we use Dewey, if this was a nonfiction book and we utilize Dewey for classifying information and for placing it in a library, can add a Dewey number there. If we use the Library of Congress for that, we can add Library of Congress number here. Or if we use the Library and Archives Canada classification schema, we could add that information here. So you have options for the types of classification information. The more you add in here, the more options get prompted when you create an item. And then they can choose to use that, they can choose not to. So that's just, it is very helpful to include classification information in the title since it does prompt that to the user at the end. And then very quickly here, at the very bottom, we have cover art. And so that is where you can place URLs of hosted images. If you don't have enhanced content and you locally host images or you host them on a website elsewhere for you to use in LS2 pack and across different modules, then those URLs are placed here. The large image is what is used in the carousels on the main page, on the homepage of LS2 pack, and then small images are what are used in LS2 cataloging and in lists and things like that. So those are the two fields that are added here. Okay, so I think we have our fully saved title. We've got everything we need. It's all up to date. So I'm going to go ahead and publish my title. I've added all the information I needed in here. And now since I added my standard number and I have enhanced content, it was able to pull in my title here, or my cover art rather. And then it was able to pull my enhanced content as well. Yep, so now I've got reviews and tags and other books similarly, and info on the author and all that sort of stuff, depending on what you have configured to display in LS2 Pack. So here we've stepped through all of these different sections of the title editor, talked about what information you may add, where you might find it, resources for accessing it, and yeah, so that was my brief, as brief as I could be, comprehensive overview of the title editor and LS2 cataloging. So let's quickly see if I can answer a couple of questions if any have come in.
I think I've answered them all, at least a first
Oh,
pass. They're all in chat,
great.
but you could certainly, Brittany just added one. So you could look through it and
Sure.
see if you want to expand on any of them.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'll read out Brittany's first here. So as far as the contributor section in our library, if there's more than 2 authors, we typically leave the author section blank when we print inside labels since there's not enough space on the labels. We have to do this by leaving all contributor box empty and then printing the label and going back in and adding them after. Is there any other way to go about this? It's a good question, Brittany. I think, since you are doing printing labels from LS2 cataloging, I, and you're using that contributor thing, I don't know that there's another way to do that as far as when you set up how you print your labels. That's a good question. Do you know, Kim? I'm
Yeah,
not as familiar with the
yeah.
label editor and the nuances in it there. So it could
I've
be that you choose a different, like make another preset for it for like print if it has multiple authors, then you could choose a different preset for that, if that makes sense, that doesn't include the author information on the label. That initially sounds like it might work.
Yeah, I mean, LS2 preferences, you can specify what gets printed. So you could just
Hmm.
not add author to that list, but you could still then at least add the data into the record. That's something that you could try.
Right.
Pretty sure author is a separate data point, so yeah. I think it's automatically, if you select author to print on a label, it's going to automatically find a contributor, whether it's in the 100 field, for example, 110, 111, or the 700, 7XX fields. It's going to pick one. So I see why you're going to that. I would probably choose, modify your label configuration so it only prints title or instead of author. Does that help? You might want to reach out to support. One of the support technicians can help you walk
Mhm.
through changing label configuration in LS2 preferences and seeing if that works for you.
Yeah, it's definitely something you might need to play around with a little bit to find the right settings
Yeah.
for that. But it makes sense to me that you should be able to add another preset for when there are multiple authors and you don't want to include, author information on the label. So it may be, another couple of clicks to choose that particular one when you need to print those labels, but it's something that could be hopefully streamline that so you don't have to go, not add the information, print the label, then go back and edit the title again.
Yeah, it seems
So
like too much work. A lot of
yeah.
extra work. Now, I don't know if you're in 4X or 5X, but typically when you select author, it only going to print one author. It's not going to print all of them. Typically, just prints one, the first one, the primary one, the creator one.
Mm.
But if it doesn't have a name in there, then it does grab a name, the first name from the 700 field, for example, in the record. So this might, yeah, you might want to contact support so they can take a deeper look and see what your data looks like and figure out a best way to get you what you need. But I would definitely at least start, if you're in 5X, at least start with modifying your label configuration in LS2 preferences to not print authors on the label. That way, then you can at least add them into the record so they're searchable. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense, Brittany. Yeah, definitely could be something that, reaching out to your other librarian to tweak those settings or reaching out to the support for them to help you with that could be very helpful. Cool. Okay. Yeah, I looked through the other questions here. don't see anything else super that's, jumping out to me quite yet. Um,
Here's something at the end here. Oh, from Carla. Oh, it's coming to host and panelists only, not everyone.
oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So they,
Carla said, yeah, additional punctuation, commas, colons, and slashes appear on our OPAC records that's not typed into this title page. Where is this pulling this from? So that's going to be something that's coming from the MARC record itself. Here in the display, especially on the view title or even in the title editor, some of that, that punctuation may be stripped out. Um, but if you aren't resaving or republishing the record within LS2 cataloging, it's just saving all of that punctuation that was in there from another cataloger if you pulled it from a Z3950, pardon, Z3950 source or um, its mark or, a vendor record or something with that punctuation in there. So um, yeah, that information's all coming from the MARC record itself. Um, so there a way to delete this. It may depend on where that punctuation is coming from. The easiest, like most comprehensive way is to edit the MARC record itself in an external MARC editor, then save it and then re-import it. And then, if it's matching on the same control number and everything, and then it will like overlay it. Depending on where that punctuation information is within the record, it may not display within LS2 cataloging and things like that. So that's just something to know. Yeah, you're very
something to
welcome, Carla.
something
Mhm.
to keep in mind too, Carla, is that sometimes the punctuation is stripped out of the title. LS2 cataloging strips some of the punctuation, the between subfield punctuation and final periods are removed from display in the editor. So you don't see it on the title page in the editor, but when you look at MARC View, you'll see all that punctuation. And the other thing to remember is that on publishing, some of that punctuation is going to be put back into the record if you had previously removed it, because it puts
Yeah,
a LS until we get to the point, someday we'll get to the point where we have a MARC record without any punctuation between the subfields or at the end of the field. And we'll just have, and then at that point, we'll probably have some automated process that'll take it all out for you. But we're not there yet because, yeah, there's lots of reasons for that. But at any rate, eventually PCC recommends that we don't have punctuation in the MARC record other than what's in an authority controlled field, but a lot of
right.
libraries aren't doing that yet. That's a major change.
Yeah,
Um,
we're still in a sort of like limbo,
yeah,
sort of adding
yeah,
punctuation, sort of not. So,
yeah,
it can be sort of up to your discretion on whether or not you want the punctuation there or not. But with how LS2 cataloging is built, we don't display some of it, but then we're not also removing it because we don't want to remove your data.
right.
So if you want to remove it using external MARC editor like Bibliophile or MARCedit, it's going to be the easiest way to go about that.
The developers the recent development, if they're touching the data field, the developers trying to make an effort to put that if the punctuation is in the MARC record, it puts it back into the display in the title editor, so at least you see it. So,
Right.
but that we haven't touched all the data fields yet. So it's kind of a mix.
Yeah. Right, everyone. I think we've covered all the questions we can, and we have gone quite over, but I'm glad that we were able to talk about all of this and go through the whole title editor. And if there are any further questions about specific areas of the title editor and functionality and things, just feel free to reach out to us via email or reach out to support or bring your question to our next Q&A session, which I'll talk about now. So we have the next webinar meeting will be another cataloging Q&A with Kim and myself, and that is on August 22nd, so 2 weeks from today at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So feel free to join us then to bring all your questions related to cataloging, and be it specific to library.solution for schools, LS2 cataloging, or cataloging in general, things like that. So we look forward to seeing you all then, and thank you all so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.